Welcome to another episode of Artsy AF.
Thanks for being here.
In this episode, this is kind of our season one cast party or wrap up. Yeah, it's just me and John hanging out at John's house. I don't even remember what we talked about because it's been about a month and a half.
Yeah,
from this current date.
It's just Andrew and I, John. Checking back in and I guess just kind of relating to where we're at so far in the process and what it's been like doing this podcast thing.
Right. So this is just kind of again, just kind of to tie a neat little bow on the first 6 episodes of interviews. And I think that we'll probably do more of this, not all the time by any means, but definitely once, maybe every 10 to 12 episodes, maybe every 10 to 53 episodes.
Yeah, who knows? We'll just check in from time to time.
Yeah, let's get a little check-in going,
And I don't know if we want to mention it on this one, but keep an eye out for these. We'll put out the bat signal sometime soon for you guys to field questions to us. And
oh, that's right.
Sit down and answer them.
Yeah, we're going to do episodes like that. I think we mentioned that somewhere at some point.
Probably in this podcast.
Podcast, yeah, definitely. So that email is artsyafpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to ask us anything, it's kind of an open-ended ask us anything, where once we have enough interesting and appropriate questions, we will make an episode about it.
Hell yeah.
And we'll kind of answer those for you guys.
Yeah, and if you really want your question on the podcast, please email them to us.
Email.
artsyafpodcast@gmail.com. And it's up to you. You can remain anonymous, but please let us know your name. If you're an artist, shout out your Instagram handle to us, and we'll blast it out on the podcast along with your question.
That's right. Please avoid our DMs both on Instagram and Facebook, just because, we got a lot of stuff going on, and I think we want to kind of centralize all the queries to... That doesn't sound right. That makes it sound like some fascist sort of like centralize all those queries, get them up against the wall. No, we didn't mean like that at all. We meant we wanted all your questions in the same inbox.
Yeah,
so
we got to keep it tidy.
We got to keep it tidy.
Got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, we're juggling like 12 plates each. And we're not even jugglers, so, it's kind of weird.
So anyway, if you're not bored of listening to us yet,
you sure will be.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. Thank you again for listening, and here we go.
Thank you so much. We love you.
Bye. All right, so this is episode number 7 of the Artsy AF podcast. John and I are kind of
just 2 dudes hanging out.
We're checking in again. It's been 5 months now since we came up with this crazy idea and implemented it.
It was deep winter when we started.
Yeah. So we kind of have, this is kind of just a check-in, a little chat before we kind of wrap up this first segment of this series.
Yeah, we've done, 6 artist interviews?
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a total learning experience.
Oh, yeah.
We had no idea what we were doing.
Right, and probably still don't.
No. Yeah. But it's like a fun way for both of us to just check in.
Yeah.
See what we've been grooving on, maybe what we've learned along the way a little bit.
Yeah. We had at least I get this way where I have these big ideas and I see it at its peak, and I'm like, ooh, we could do this and then this and like all these ideas, like having a big like round table discussion with our creative friends in the scene and having it like live streamed and all these things.
Yeah.
And now we're kind of like coming up against the reality of what we're really doing here. And so, yeah, I think this is a topic we could get into, you know, just talking about the balance between
having an ideal and how the reality manifests, you know.
Right.
Like, yeah, you have this big idea and then you realize, oh, well, I'm starting from scratch.
Right.
You can't become a master in a week, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's a good, you know, that's just some good advice, I think, just solid advice for anyone starting on their path or just maybe a year or a couple years into it. And I, you know, I'm only 7 or 8 years in, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I'm just now, I feel like I'm starting to kind of like pull these strands together. For instance, like, you know, I have this really rebellious side that's kind of like, you know, I was on this trip for like 2 weeks of just like really having this resentment against branding and this whole social media parade that we are part of and subject ourselves to every day. And sure, there's definitely some, you know, negative aspects to that, but I'm learning how to kind of integrate that rebel voice into some sort of energetic flow and like tame the beast of you know, marketing, social media, that whole front end aspect of making art and being supported by it in the world.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I had the same thing, you know, I started out painting and I was like, well, I just want to create tremendous paintings that people will just have to support when they see how wonderful these paintings are.
Right.
And I'm going to make paintings and I'm just going to be a painter and that's how it's going to work. But then you see, you know, we live in a time and place and how reality plays out. And there is, you know, like whether you want to explicitly call it or not, everybody has a brand. That's the way reality is right now.
Yep.
And yeah, I think, you know, there's a balance between your ideal and the reality, and that you kind of have to embrace what is happening in reality, but then you can kind of define it on your own terms, you know, like you can be a blatant brander, or you can just, hey, this is the way I see the world. This is the way I integrate with reality, and I want to share it with you. And that becomes, you know, quote unquote, a brand.
Right.
But
I think I think I just had a problem with that word, you know, because it's also like branding a cattle with a hot iron, you know, and I'm like,
it's like a semantics thing.
Are we just cattle? You know?
Kind of.
I mean,
we kind of are.
We kind of are, but we can also, with that, you know, learning to use the tool. It's like, I don't know, there's probably some old saying that I'm pulling this from, but with a hammer, you can build a house or you can smash in a car window, you know, and like with the whole internet thing and social media and branding and all that, I think I was, you know, a little like worked up over it, and I was like trying to just smash everything with it, and it's like, it's this interesting process, you know. It's because it also not only dovetails with making paintings or whatever it is you're doing, but it is an art in itself to learn how to do that stuff effectively and stay true to who you are. And I think everybody has their own definition of staying true to themselves, you know.
And it's a very personal thing.
Yeah, it's just defining that within, I think.
Yeah, like rebellion is an interesting thing too. And I don't know, I found when I look back in my life, like the times when I was most rebellious and angry at the way things were, the more unhappy I was. And I think there is a place for that. But I think I've learned over time and through creativity and integrating with reality creatively is, taking the tools available to you and converting it and using the energy and the power that it has for something positive and creative,
right,
and illuminating,
right.
And like, if you want to be rebellious and talk shit, I mean, go ahead, but you're probably gonna have a terrible time,
right?
It's like it's wasted energy, I think.
Sure.
Like, like if you're upset at something, like, get the fuck over it and figure out something creative to do. Maybe if you don't want to participate in that, figure out something to do.
Yeah.
And instead of just being upset at what reality is, because we come at, like, we all start out with a big ideal and a big mission, as an artist, you caught a glimpse of God and you just want to translate that and share that with the world, this like amazing revelation. But then when it gets into practice, there's all these weird ways like rules within society that you have to operate within to be a functional person, to pay the bills.
Right.
But then like still that ideal still is being manifest. And maybe not seeing like the reality of your time and place and the way you like kind of are resigned to share what you do, like, is part of that ideal that you had, and it's like pushing you through.
Right.
I don't know. And you're like being tempered by all those experiences and like coming into your own character and maturing and gaining wisdom through being upset about how this is.
Right.
But then you creatively figure out a way to enjoy this aspect. Like, you make it work for you. And it's all part of the thing. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that,
like, yeah,
that to that, like, I think art in itself is like kind of a rebellious act in a lot of ways. Because, you could be spending your time, who knows what,
like
watching TV or playing video games or whatever it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of crap being shoved down your throat. And you got a hit of something way more deeper and beautiful in the world.
Right.
So you're like, fuck this shit. Check out this shit.
Yeah, exactly. And so you embark on that journey, so to speak. I like to couch everything kind of in a hero's journey, because I think it's pretty appropriate. Like, everybody's, they say the star of their own movie or the director of their own life or whatever it is. And you go out into the world, you're like, oh, I'm going to make art and it's going to be awesome and people are going to love it. The end. And it's like, that's not a good story.
Yeah.
There's like the challenges that you go through and the things like, in my case, branding that you might not like.
Overcoming that resistance.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And the fears of letting you self-identified with some sort of rebellious part of yourself.
Right.
And you have to let that go.
Yeah, or just learn how to reallocate that same type of feeling or energy or whatever it is you want to call it, and learning how to just accept the reality that you're placed in this time and space. Something that my friend Free at the show at Red Rocks on Saturday, we were kind of talking about me having this rebellious streak, and I was just like, branding or whatever, and he was like kind of mocking me, but in this funny way, and he's like, did Michelangelo have a website? And like, I'm like, oh dude, that's so good, because not only is it funny, but it also like kind of like snapped me out of that, like kind of like, oh yeah, like Michelangelo lived, in the 1500, I think 1500s. So it's like,
but it's also like,
you got to be here in your body.
If Michelangelo was here now,
time and place, he would have a brand.
Yeah, he would have a fucking killer Instagram.
Yeah,
and a dope website.
Yeah,
it's like
he'd be live streaming the Sistine Chapel. He's like, oh, I'm upside down again today. Yeah, it's just funny how, like, opinions can change, and I think that's part of just being a being an alert human being is being open, and probably being a creative type of personality is just being open to new information and letting that actually inform you, like putting you in formation. You know what I'm saying? Like you're like, oh, well, this situation happened, and it's like, well, this isn't working. Me just in this negative thought loop about branding and like thinking that everyone's just like, you know, I don't know, who knows what I was actually thinking. It's just, it was just this like underlying resentment of the way things are, which is
trying to deny the present state.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of working with it. And
yeah, well, that's
what I learned this summer. No.
Well, like that's what's cool about, you know, how you're talking about like rebellion, right? So I think there's kind of like two brands of rebellion.
Two brands? Sorry.
Two types of rebellion.
How dare you?
We are on the word brand. But anyway, all right, there's two types.
Yeah, well, no, I get it.
But there's the rebellion where you're just mad at shit and you're upset.
Right.
And you're destructive towards your relationships and yourself and physical property type rebellion.
Yeah.
But then there's a rebellion in that there's the current state of reality that you feel that there's something wrong, but then you catch a glimpse or a hint of something very beautiful, like a tremendous amount of potential that reality isn't quite meeting you on yet.
Yeah.
But it's fueled by like love and creativity. And then when you like go full hog into that type of rebellion, like all of a sudden people start joining along in what you're doing, and you become happier together, you know, more connected. Like there's more hugging happening. There's more like artwork and creativity surrounding you. Yeah. And it's like the sweet rebellion, you know?
Yeah. Like, it's like the subtle rebellion. You're not just like, fuck the man. You're like, all right, I'll play your little game and I'll win. Like, exactly. You know? And so I just kind of wanted to share that change of my state of mind and my feeling toward it. And it really actually, it's crazy. I don't know how, I would not claim to know how reality works, but since I kind of got over myself this past week, I've seen like a lot of sales. I'm actually like working a little side job right now to get my dough up for the summer.
Hell yeah.
And I don't know, I just feel like a million times better.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's cool. The subtlest little shift in the way you think about something can lead the way to years and years of unpacking and growing. You know? You like, there's like this little block in your reality, and then you just open up the floodgates to this new channel that you get to have fun with and experiment with.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, I mean, you know, other opinions that have changed, like I'm pretty sure I've mentioned once or twice on this podcast that I'm not smoking weed right now. Well, I'm smoking weed again, ladies and gentlemen.
Me too.
Not a lot.
I said I was over it.
But I'm choifing the honky doinks again, you guys. It's having a good time with it.
When the spring sun pokes its head out, something happens. Your state changes. So please be advised, any opinions we state on how we live our lives in this podcast are subject to change
probably
rapidly.
Immediately. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've been partaking in marijuana after, you know,
a little bit of the ganj.
A little bit, yeah. Can be nice. It's funny how, you know, in the wintertime there's something about it just wasn't working.
Right.
And then now it's like, oh yeah, it feels pretty nice every once in a while. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Been live painting a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, that was another thing, was I was kind of in the colder months being like, live painting.
Yeah.
Stupid. I'm over it. And then what was it? 2 weekends ago, I got my first chance to live paint at Red Rocks, and
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. It was
that's rad.
It was my first time ever at Red Rocks. Ooh, it was amazing.
Damn, that is special.
And it also happened to be Spangel's last live band performance, and it was so much fun. Like, it's interesting after having like live painting gigs where, you're at a bar or whatever. Nobody really seems to care.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like, why am I wasting my time doing this? And then, you persevere and you keep doing it. And then all of a sudden an event comes along and you're like, oh, this is why I do it. It is awesome.
Yeah.
So contrary to previous podcasts, I like live painting again.
Yeah. You got to bring it to the people, man.
Yeah. It's really nice. It's really nice when you meet people that they're just having a great time.
Yeah.
And they're also happy to see you doing what you're doing, and you're happy to meet other people.
Right.
Yeah. And you make like new friends and just connecting with people,
Yeah.
It feels good.
It's so important. I think, that's, part of the reason why I do what I do is like, it's like, yeah, it's super fun, but it's also kind of like this, social thing too.
Mm-hmm.
Your icebreaker is you standing there under a bright light and painting a painting on an easel. I've thought about that a lot, because been at it for 7 or 8 years, and I'm like, I don't want to use it as a crutch,
mm-hmm.
but it really does help. It's like part of it's like, I'm cool, right? Like,
yeah.
And then you get this affirmation, but then you also meet really awesome people too.
Yeah, lots of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, the live painting thing is so funny because I don't know. I have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of people got into painting because they didn't really fit in socially, or
Yeah.
And
I
they're
just rose my hand for you guys not watching.
And they're introverted, so they get into art. But then it like does this weird 180 where you're taking your thing that you did because you were antisocial and you didn't fit in,
mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden you're live painting and people are flocking to you,
right,
to talk to you. And I think like I hadn't been live painting very long, so that might have been part of why I was kind of like down about it too, because it like felt like a lot,
It is.
There's like crazy music and there's people meeting you and you gotta set up all this equipment and you're just like, whoa, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, and we shouldn't act like it's not a lot,
Yeah.
Like, not trying to just toot our own horns here, but guys, it's a lot. If you see us out there, like, just know, like, that stuff didn't appear there by itself. If we're painting at Red Rocks, like, we hauled all that up the stairs. I think my forearms are still a little bit sore.
You're looking jacked, Andrew.
Yeah.
Damn, dude, you've been to Red Rocks, son? Shit.
Did you haul like 40 pounds of stuff up the stairs at Red Rocks? Oh, glad you noticed. But yeah, we do a lot, and so I don't know where I was going with that, but
what I'd also recommend to like younger artists, if you're interested in live painting, find a festival you want to go to and hit up on the website. They usually have like a contact form.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or go to a show in your area. Maybe talk to the artist that's there. Don't be scared. They'll be nice. And if they're not, well, who cares? Fuck them. But yeah, like if you are interested in starting to live paint, start asking around, and like it can be scary and it is a lot of work, but try it out. Like, try it out a bunch of times and see what happens.
Yeah.
Because you might be surprised. Every once in a while, a night comes along and it's just beautiful. It's really fun, and you're meeting cool people. Right. There's this cool music and it's all happening, and you're making a painting at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like some interesting flows and energy, I think, that gets encapsulated into that artwork that otherwise you wouldn't. And you might just go home being super elated and really happy about what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. It's like an affirmation from reality a lot of times. And you do, or at least I've experienced this, and I think most live painters have, and it's a big part of why we do it. Like, you'll paint in a way many times that you would never have painted in your studio, or
it can be very freeing.
Yeah, you come up with ideas that you never would have done.
It's easier to get out of your mind in a way. Like, when you start out, you might be super in your mind because you're nervous and you don't have your chops for like painting in front of people, and you might be nervous about people watching you. And like, yeah, plan on that. It's going to happen. But then you get over this weird hump. At least I noticed I got over this hump to now where like I trusted myself to just kind of space the fuck out, listen to music and talk to people, and this painting materializes. And yeah, it's like whole different, there's like different brainwave function happening in those events than being at home.
Yeah, totally. It's like you were saying, it's taking that solitary thing and plopping it right down in the middle of a party, you know, and I think that's, you know, a lot of interesting things can come out of that.
Yeah.
And people are going to ask you a lot of questions, you know, and some of them might be just kind of like run of the mill questions, but some of them might trigger something in you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's nice, but every once in a while you have somebody that makes a really strong impression one way or another. And then, yeah, in that heightened state and you're painting at a show, I think there's a lot of interesting and cool things to be learned in that environment. Like, it helps you grow as a person.
Yeah. It's another one of those like informing things where you go out on your little journey and you learn. Yeah. If that's your intention, which I think, you know, if you're an artist, it's probably why you're doing it, at least on a subconscious level.
Hell yeah.
You know?
And if you're an artist, like, I don't think it'd be too much of a stretch to say that you probably have social anxiety of one type or another. And it's a great way to kind of force yourself into a position to talk to a bunch of people. Yeah. And it can really help you get out of your shell. Yeah. And just, you know, just listening to what people have to say. Yeah. I think that's a big part of live painting is just kind of, you know, learning how to listen and learning also that people are really keen to tell you what's on their mind because they see you being all, you know, quote unquote brave and sharing your art with other random people who are there at that party or show. And they just want to tell you everything. Yeah. You get to be vulnerable together. Yeah. It's like a safe space in the coolest way possible.
Right. Not a forced like safe space either, but yeah, it's a very interesting thing we do.
Yeah. It's a hell of a trip, dude. It's crazy. It's just crazy like talking and like changes of opinion how the whole thing's so slippery. Like you start talking about like it's this way now. I don't really like this anymore. I don't really do that. I do this now. And then, you know, a month later, you're doing the opposite. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. It's always slippery. Let it keep changing.
Right. Yeah, for me, it was like, oh, I'm not working a job this year. And then I come to realize like, oh, there's plenty of times I could have used some extra money already, and now I'm back at it, and just it's weird that I've had like one of the most productive and best feeling weeks in a while this week. And I'm not going to attribute it at all to just taking a job, but like there's something about using that to further your artistic or creative goals that seems to at least be rewarded by whatever forces are behind, you know, making people want to buy your stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was interesting. Like I did a AMA on Instagram the other day, and I had like tons of people
ask me anything.
Ask me anything. Yeah. And you know, there was like tons of people asking how to live full time on art.
Yeah.
How to be a full time artist.
That's the hardest question.
And
probably,
I think it might be the wrong question to ask. I don't know. Yeah. Because, you know, right now with art, I could live and pay the bills just on art, but I still have a job because I don't want the financial strain on being an artist. And also, like, I think it's important to, you know, like there's something really beautiful and cool maybe about just giving it all up and being an artist, but you're probably going to be broke for a long time. Yeah. And there's nothing like shameful or bad about having work outside of making art.
Right.
Because, like, I eventually would love to have a house with a really cool art studio, so then I could invite people over to come paint with us and maybe do like art lessons and stuff like that. And if I really want to do that, if I have a job in addition to my art, I can actually like save some money and not be constantly worried and bogged down by the stress of money in my life.
Exactly.
And it's like, what do you really want to do? Like, what do you want to do in a year? And like, how do you see yourself as 60? Like, what do you hope you did?
Yeah.
And like, maybe plan from there. Because I don't know. It's a weird thing. It's like a weird, I don't know if it's ego or what of wanting to just make money on art, but I think it could kind of fuck you up.
Yeah.
Wanting to do that too bad.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, I there's no shame and there's nothing wrong with making money outside of your art.
Right.
Like, support yourself, man. Like,
totally.
Try to like give yourself a little bit of comfort if you can. So then you can, like, when you do your art shit, you're not like desperate.
Right. And it just it changes the whole framework, because you don't have to rely on this next painting, like you can, for me, I like to take my time, and I say that now, and as we said earlier, things can change, but I like to take my time, and I think I make my best work when it's almost like when I have obligations that I have to do outside of painting, like fulfilling them first during a day.
Yeah.
And like kind of like reining in that, like keeping that beast on a leash until it's like, okay, all the to-dos are marked off, and like every day it's painting, obviously that's a to-do, but by the time you get there, after you're done with all the other obligatory things, you're just like a fucking beast on that canvas. You've
been waiting all day.
You shred it.
You got no stresses now. You took care of what you needed to do, and now you can just dive in.
Yeah, and you're thinking clear, and you have all that bandwidth open, and you're firing. You're pew, pew.
Hell yeah. And then eventually, like, as it keeps growing, eventually, like, maybe you can, like, you don't have to think about making money by other means, but don't be in a rush,
Totally.
Like, be easy on yourself.
Yeah.
Don't go too crazy. Or do go too crazy too.
Yeah.
It's like whatever style fits you, I suppose. I can only speak from my own experience.
Right. Right. Yeah, maybe you're just one of those people who are just beast all the time. And just like can just like get it done. And good, give that a shot, obviously.
Yeah, but do the damn thing. This whole life is an experiment. Nobody knows why we're here.
Right.
I mean, if that's what you want to do, dude, fucking do it.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of Ask Me Anything, so we came up with this idea. So we want to do an Ask Us Anything for the podcast. Basically, after this episode, we're inviting you guys to email us at ArtsyAF podcast, right? I think it's
yes.
It's ArtsyAF podcast. We'll put the email address in the description of this podcast. Yeah. And just
ArtsyAF podcast at gmail.com.
Yeah. So that address once again is artsyafpodcast at gmail.com.
Wow.
So ask us anything. Seriously, like even, questions like what our favorite color is, and, how old we were when we first got laid, whatever,
Yeah.
Do we like plantains or bananas,
Yeah, send some funky
ones. And that's a toss up. Like, I like grilled plantains. Those are pretty nice.
Yeah.
Or, whatever you want to ask us. So when we release this podcast, which should be, I don't know, sometime this summer, we will field those emails, and we will have hopefully a whole podcast dedicated to answering those questions that you guys send in.
Hell yeah.
And if you want to include your name and where you're from, and we'll shout you out. We'll shout you out. Even if you want to put a little Instagram handle on there or whatever,
Yeah, we'll throw out your Instagram handle.
Yeah, for sure.
Heck yeah.
And we just appreciate you guys participating here with us. And we wanted to reach out and let you know that that's coming down the pipe. So ask us anything, please. Anything. Like, what was our first mushroom trip like? Or what's it like now in Denver that mushrooms are decriminalized?
Ooh, speaking of which.
Yeah, we just decriminalized Denver just decriminalized mushrooms. We honestly had nothing to do with it because we live in Boulder, except I
pumped it out.
Yeah, we
promoted social media and stuff.
We promoted it pretty hardcore.
Monumental.
Yeah, it's huge.
Huge.
By the way, everyone listening, you probably know this by now, but decriminalization does not mean legalization. You will still, if they find you with probably under an ounce, I'm not sure exactly. We probably could have done a little research on this, but if you do have possession of mushrooms, you're still going to get a ticket. But guess what? You're not going to go to jail.
Yeah.
Decriminalization basically means that it's the lowest priority on law enforcement's list. So hooray for our autonomy over our own consciousness.
Yeah. It's a huge win for freedom of consciousness and freedom of thought. It's this tiny little seed planted that's the start of something huge. Yeah, a spore planted. The mycelium is growing. But I just think it's really beautiful. Mushrooms saved my life.
Oh, yeah.
I was on antidepressants.
Yeah.
And then I found mushrooms, and they essentially healed me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, a hoe to that. Amen to that. Like, there's something about them.
They smooth you out.
And now we just sound like hippies being like, yeah, man, like, something about those mushrooms.
But it's also,
but for real, like, they're medicinal. They're, nature, straight from nature. Like, it's almost like the earth's gift to life on this planet. Mm-hmm. They also just mycelial networks in general play such a crucial role in the biome of the earth. Mm-hmm. I think that the oldest living or the largest living organism is a giant underground mycelial network or mushroom up in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I saw Paul Stamets speak, and he kind of got some pictures in a helicopter of the land that it's on. But
yeah, so in my opinion, which take of that what you will, and it might change. They're a crucial part of our world, mm-hmm. and it's finally happening, guys. Like, the gift that the earth has given us is no longer a crime in one city in the world.
Yeah, it's huge. I
mean,
it
might be in other cities too. I don't know, but we've changed our lives with these things. And by lives, I mean just states of mind that we're incarcerating, like for instance, my whole resentment against the brand. I'm not saying mushroom cured me of this, but the fact that I have those experiences underneath my belt means that I don't have to totally buy into every little thing that I think, because we don't exactly know where thought originates. We don't know if we're having our own thoughts or if it's just some sort of groove that's been set out by, say, a parent or a society or an Illuminati, who knows? Mm-hmm. But this thought of, just negativity, you can get stuck in those places,
Yeah, and I think you're seeing it manifest in the culture at large right now too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, especially like if you go online and stuff, it seems like everybody's losing their goddamn mind over anything and everything.
Yeah.
And that what I hope is that there's some sort of trend or support happening for, like, I forget what percentage of Americans are medicated, taking antipsychotics, anti-anxiety.
Let's just say it's over
depression meds.
Over 50 for sure.
And I'm sure, like in some specific cases, people like
you need those, but
then it's like our culture and what's happening with technology, we're being bombarded,
mm-hmm.
and people are like kind of losing their goddamn minds.
Yeah.
And then something like psilocybin mushrooms, in the right circumstance, in the right setting, you can take a dose of that, and all of a sudden, like, the brain gets to take a sigh of relief.
Yeah, it's like taking off.
There's clarity, and you can
mm-hmm.
take a step back and look at what you're stressing about, and then there's actually like what feels like a truly physical, brain chemistry balance.
Yeah,
that happens when you have this experience, and you don't have to take it every day.
Right.
You have an experience.
One good time
mm-hmm.
is a lot of times all you need.
Yeah.
And the work they're doing at Johns Hopkins, I think, is the main leading research team getting in there with the mushrooms right now. I mean, they're good for people at the end of their lives who are facing terminal illnesses, like coming to grips with death and not being afraid of death so much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, there's a fine line between, the sadness of losing someone and just a complete and utter catastrophe because, you can't let go.
Mm-hmm.
They help a lot with, like you were saying, depression.
Mm-hmm.
They've helped me with that and anxiety.
Yeah.
And just like realizing how, for me personally, how funny the world is.
Yeah.
Like you see,
take it all so lightly.
Yeah. You see the humor in it all. And
like your deepest stress, it'll like push your face in it and force you to laugh at what you were so bent out of shape about.
Right.
And then everything becomes lighter.
Right.
And
you kind of take on a new perspective of you extricate yourself from the chains of the ego a little bit, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And you're able to see your suffering or your plight or your circumstances from a different angle, and you're like, look at this guy over here, like, oh shit, he just ran into a glass window because he thought that like he could just be an artist without branding or whatever, and it's just like, that's funny. Like, come on, you gotta laugh at that. I think they help you be able to laugh at yourself, which I think, like, for me personally, I used to speaking of personally, used to take things so personally. Yeah. Like my homies we all obviously, just a group of dudes in high school and college, just used to roast each other constantly. And I don't think it was until after I had a good trip or two that I realized, like, oh, this is just a fun little game we play. I don't have to take it personally. Yeah. And in fact, if I do take it personally, it kind of ruins the game, not only for me, but for everyone.
Yeah. You realize like everybody's just this clear white light in these flawed meat bodies.
Yeah.
Like bumping into each other.
Yeah.
And having fun with each other. Yeah. Yeah. And you start coming to the realization where like nothing is personal. It's just a happening. And it's beautiful and it's grand. And it shows you the beauty and fun. And I think when it comes down to it, the fact that in Denver they voted that you won't be locked in a cage for having those experiences is a win for humanity at large.
Right. Even if you don't think it is. Like, I mean, I doubt many people actually following our podcast disagree with that statement, but like, even if you're like, I don't know, it's still, we should approach it with caution, and a lot needs to be talked about in terms of like set and setting and education, and appropriateness. Like, even alcohol has its appropriate
time and place.
Yeah, and no one, even if you're a drinker, condones like shitty behavior even if you're drunk.
Go take 4 shots and go to work, man.
Yeah, it's like
it's silly.
Yeah. Although you'd be better off microdosing and going to work, just for the record. But yeah, I think it really is a win for humanity, like you were saying. We are accepting, it's just something else that, like, I think society at large has to accept, that humans are going to change their consciousness regardless of whatever laws you have there, and to just like let people be and make those choices about their own minds and their own bodies.
Yeah.
And
like, psychedelics aren't for everybody, but for certain people, they really, groove with the way their brain works, and it helps them to be sweeter, nicer, gentler people. And I'm all for fostering that.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And you'll probably not be surprised to realize that the world keeps churning.
Yeah.
And people might seem to just be like nicer on the street when you're in Denver. I don't know.
Right. Well, yeah. Oh yeah. So, and just to speak to that, maybe to give you guys a little bit of foreshadowing and a preview of what might be coming down the pipe. We wanted, not in this podcast, but maybe in a future one, we wanted to get into the ins and outs of, because I think this is how you set up social mores around new things that are being introduced into society, like drug use and like changes of consciousness. We want, and maybe this is a bit of a call to anybody else who wants to saddle up and sit down and chat with us about this. We want to have a podcast about what is and what is not acceptable drug use, and where, when, all those things.
Just setting, dosage.
Exactly.
How to remain safe.
And what to do if someone you are with is having a freak out, or just having a moment on some drugs. Like, there's kind of a protocol, I guess, for if someone's being belligerently drunk.
Yeah. And I think it's our responsibility.
Yeah. It's our communities.
So if we want to see reality change and meet with us, it's our responsibility to do these things responsibly.
Right.
And, like, show a template for what it can be. And we're experimenting, and it can be, it can be a squirrely subject to know.
For sure.
What is appropriate to do. But
right.
I think we want to try to talk about and create a model of how to live life healthily.
Right.
And safely, and
while also having fun.
Yeah. And have a great time.
Yeah. So we're just putting that out there. Anybody who would like to talk about that, I have a few people in mind right now. I won't just call them out, but yeah, I think that could be a pretty interesting kind of like a round table discussion at some point.
Yeah.
If we wanted to do that a little bit down the road. So if you're listening, 2 things. Please reach out if you'd like to be a part of that conversation, and and you have experience in the field. I'm thinking like people who work with Dance Safe, people who work with Zendo, or just, people who have a critique or a well thought out, articulated commentary on what we're seeing now and where we'd like to go with all that.
Yeah.
And the second thing, don't forget, ask us anything. And that email again is artsyafpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah. Send us your questions.
So yeah, I guess we're going to sign off for episode 7.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. And suppose in the subject for the email, just write, ask me anything.
Yeah. Just write a ask me anything. It'll probably be the first few emails we've ever gotten at that email address. Thanks for listening to another episode of Artsy AF Podcast.
For additional images and notes on this episode, you can check out our website, artsyafpodcast.com.
And you can find me, Andrew Norris, at andrew.norris.arts on Instagram, and andrewnorrisarts.com is my website. I also have links on my website to episodes as well as all my best paintings.
And you can find me, John Speaker. My website is johnspeaker.com. On Instagram, I'm at John Speaker, and on Facebook, John Speaker Art.
And we want to give a special thanks to Blair Speaker, John's lovely wife and creative director of the podcast. She also updates the website and does all the podcast notes. So thank you, Blair.
And we'd also like to thank Tyler Billman. He created the music for this podcast. You can find Tyler on SoundCloud and Instagram. His name is Get Billsman. That's GetBillsman.
Thanks again for listening. Peace.
Thank you.